Today, we are talking about winners and losers from the NFL draft, and we are going to be highlighting some of the rookie winners and losers. We'll have another episode coming out in a couple days where we will be talking about some veterans. But Alfredo, start us off. Who was your biggest rookie winner from the NFL draft last weekend?
Oh man, the biggest rookie winner I would have to say is Anthony Richardson. And this was, I believe, in my opinion, this was the player that I was most worried about because of what the potential landing spots could be, because his skill set is so unique and there was such a volatile wide range of where he could go. You had people saying he could go number one. You had people saying, oh, maybe he falls all the way down to the Buccaneers, the Vikings, something like that. And I think he ended up in the absolute perfect spot because this is a player that people throw on the word raw. It's more like he's inexperienced. And because raw is someone that doesn't have those talents and needs to develop talents. He has talent. He's inexperienced. And he's going to get the experience with the Indianapolis Colts. He's going to be in a supportive environment where they want to get him on the field early. Whereas had he gone to maybe the Panthers or Texans, you're looking at something that's a bit more difficult. I don't think they have as many weapons or they're as set for a guy like him to take over. Lions or Seahawks, he ends up on the bench sitting for a couple of years and not really developing. So with the Colts, he's got Shane Steichen as his head coach, who has just worked wonders with some of the league's best passers in each of his first seasons with these young QBs. Justin Herbert in 2020, he was quarterback 7 as a rookie. And then in 2021, Jalen Hurts, who was quarterback 6 in his first year as a starter. You're talking about those guys getting 5 and 10 rushing touchdowns, respectively. You got to think Anthony Richardson's range of outcomes is somewhere near there. And all of a sudden, with the young weapons they have, Jonathan Taylor, Michael Pittman, Alec Pierce, Josh Downs, Jelani Woods, you kind of keep going down the line there. He's got some weapons around him. He's got a good offensive line that you could argue is top 10 or 15 in the league, which obviously helps for a rookie. The floor for Anthony Richardson is a lot higher than people think because of the rushing ability, and I don't think it's all that crazy to suggest that if he starts, let's say 13, 14 games for the Colts, he's pretty easily a top 10 fantasy quarterback. If guys like Daniel Jones and Justin Fields were able to do it last year, you don't necessarily need all that passing production for him to be fantasy viable. So yeah, Anthony Richardson is a big winner for the NFL draft.
Absolutely. I mean, great landing spot, great draft capital, 2 things you want to see from a rookie. And, I think people a lot of times get, there's this misconception that rushing means upside, when I think you already talked about it a little bit, Alfredo, but it's kind of the opposite. Rushing is what gives you a floor. If a guy's consistently rushing, scoring touchdowns, and getting some yards on the ground, that's going to raise his weekly floor. So you're not going to have those weeks where he's going to be a liability in your lineup. He's going to continue putting up good numbers every single week. So completely with you. Hard to push back on anything there. Now, if you're watching the show right now, we are talking about winners and losers, but there's actually a link in the description below to an article where you can find more winners and losers that we've talked about in a roundtable sort of format here with some other Football Guys staffers. So if you're looking for even more information on draft winners and losers, be sure to check out that article below. And if you're looking for more video content, youtube.com/footballguys. Be sure to subscribe so you can see all of the video content that we have to offer. Every week we got a new episode of The Launchpad. We've got the Pretend GM. We've got the Football Guys College Show. We've got the Audible and so much more. youtube.com/footballguys. Jeff, and again, I wanted to bring both of you guys on today because you both know your stuff when it comes to rookies. Alfredo, you've got some of the scouting experience going deep with rookies there. And Jeff, with the rookie guide, you have been studying these rookies since, most people didn't even know their names. So, through this whole process, who's a guy that you have deemed one of the big winners from the draft?
I think Sam Laporta is a big winner. When you look at, he was the second taken tight end in the draft, and I think everybody kind of had Michael Mayer as their tight end 1 through the process. Laporta went before Michael Mayer, and he was right behind Dalton Kincaid as the second tight end. He almost was a first-round pick, fell three picks into the second round, and so he almost caught that first-round draft capital, which tells you exactly what the Lions believe in him. When you look at the Lions draft, I think they had 5 picks in the first 50. They ended up moving around a little bit, but they took him before Brian Branch, who was a player that was projected to be a top 15, top 20 player in the draft. That he slid down the board a little bit, but they went ahead and having that other pick coming up, they could have waited and said, well, we'll take between Laporta and Mayer, whoever slides. They didn't do that. They went out and they targeted Laporta. They added Laporta to that offense. You look at that offense, we know that Jameson Williams is starting the year with that suspension, unfortunately. And when he does come in, we all love the talent of Jameson Williams, but initially they used him to stretch the field last year. And I think he can do a lot more than that, but if they're using him in that role, they're stretching the field vertically with him, they're allowing Laporta to work the seam, and they're allowing Laporta to work kind of underneath, intermediate, in Jared Goff's preferred areas with Amon-Ra St. Brown. And so get on the field right now. He's really just competing with James Mitchell at tight end, with Brock Wright at tight end. We saw that Lions tight end room for half the season last year after they traded TJ Hawkinson. And they really fell off.
Go ahead. Sorry, Jeff.
Just say now they really fell off, and so I don't think that there's any expectations that there's a real push there. They might use maybe Wright as a blocker, maybe Mitchell gets on the field, but that's a young player that was undeveloped as well. And so I think there's a very clear landing spot, very clear path for Laporta. And as you're going through your rookie drafts, you get to the back half of round one. If you're in a tight end premium league and you start to really wonder who you should be taking here, I mean, Laporta's kind of staring you in the face as a guy that he was, like, I believe the 9th or 10th selected fantasy player in the draft. So I think that it was a great landing spot for him to catch that value and really shove him ahead of Michael Mayer, in my opinion.
We always talk about, scouting the player and not the helmet, but I mean, Iowa has just been a tight end factory lately, and there's no one-to-one replacement for TJ Hawkinson, but them shipping TJ Hawkinson out, who was a product of Iowa and a very good NFL player, for Sam Laporta out of Iowa. I mean, it seems like a pretty seamless transition here. So it's almost like they had this planned ahead of time, because there were a lot of people scratching their head saying, why would you ship off TJ Hawkinson? But then just to bring in Laporta, who profiles pretty similarly to TJ Hawkinson right into that offense, should be a lot of fun. So I am with you there. That leaves me with my guy, who I have deemed as the biggest winner of the draft, and it is Devin Achane. And there were obviously some concerns about his size coming into the draft. They say 5'9". Some people say he's a little closer to 5'8", but 188 pounds, so he's short and he is thin. But that didn't stop him from dominating at Texas A&M. He had a 14.7% target share in college, which puts him up in the 93rd percentile, so we know he can catch the ball. And his 1,102 rushing yards were the 29th best in the FBS last year. And he broke out as a 19-year-old freshman. So this kid has been picking up steam for the last couple of years, racked up 26 touchdowns through his 3-year college career. And he declared for the draft and absolutely smoked the combine after doing that. He ran a 4.32 40-yard dash, which was the 3rd fastest at the combine this year, the fastest among all running backs, and the 3rd fastest for running backs in NFL history, behind just Chris Johnson and Keith Marshall. Now, you can comp him to a lot of different guys with this speed, but with the draft capital and the speed, the guys that he kind of links up with historically are Chris Johnson, Darren McFadden, Ben Tate, and LaMichael James. LaMichael James never really put it together on an NFL field, but some pretty good company to be a part of. Now, he lands on a team with a very clear path to have some meaningful volume as a rookie. No offense here, Alfredo. I love Raheem Mostert and I love Jeff Wilson Jr., but I'm not entirely sure that these guys are going to stay healthy this year. Jeff Wilson Jr. goes into his year 28 season. Raheem Mostert is 31. These guys are 2 veterans who have often picked up injuries throughout their career. And if there's one thing we know about head coach Mike McDaniel, it's that he loves speed out of his players. I mean, they've made a huge push for Tyreek Hill. He inherited a team with Jalen Waddle, but he brought Jalen Waddle his maximum potential last year. They obviously went out and signed Raheem Mostert, who's a burner, but just getting up there in age. And it seems like Achane is just tailor-made for this offense. He can get outside and kick those burners up and just make big plays in a offense that does a great job of just stretching the defense out and making lanes for this speed to do what it does best. Now, there's obviously some fears that Dalvin Cook or Joe Mixon could possibly end up here, but as it stands, you can make a pretty realistic argument that as far as 2023 projections go, Achane could be the RB3 in this class behind Bijan Robinson and Jahmyr Gibbs. Now, obviously, Charbonnet and Kendre Miller had some good landing spots as well, but Achane is in a position where he could make an immediate impact this season right now. So he was a big winner for me in the NFL draft, and Alfredo, I'm really excited to see what he can do in that Miami offense.
Yeah, I mean, as a Miami fan, I'm going to let you know, like, he probably won't be this running back that's going to be getting 18, 20 touches in a game, but he's got that profile where even if he gets 8 or 9 touches in that game, he's such a dynamic player that he can make things happen. They don't really use the running backs too much in the receiving game, and I don't even know if that's overwhelmingly what Achane is great at anyways, but man, once they get him in space, there's going to be just a lot of really fast players flying in all different directions, and the scoring potential for that team and then the players in fantasy is just going to be through the roof.
Yeah, and he was kind of a polarizing player before the draft, because with that size, people weren't sure how far he was going to slide, but he got that 3rd round draft capital and a great landing spot, so big time winner there. Now that we've talked about the good, let's talk about the bad. With winners comes losers. So let's talk about some of the guys that saw their value dip a little bit after the NFL draft. Back to you again, Alfredo. Who did you see dip as a loser from last weekend's draft?
Yeah, I mean, this one, I feel like it's kind of obvious, and we're all looking for the silver lining. It's Zach Charbonnet, the running back out of UCLA, and now he's on the Seattle Seahawks. And I think that so many of us, I'm fairly certain he was ranked as like the consensus RB3 everywhere for this rookie class. And it's because we thought that not only does he have the skill set, but that he'd be able to go into a team and become the immediate starter, get a workhorse role. He's big, so he can take the goal line carries, and he can catch passes, which means, he doesn't have to come off the field for all 3 downs. And I guess that's kind of the silver lining here, is that his skill set lends to more valuable touches for the Seahawks. Man, it's so frustrating to think that he could have been on the Bengals if they're moving on from Joe Mixon. He could have been next in line maybe for the Chargers. They keep trying to look for someone there. But it's just so frustrating to see him now on the Seahawks. It really ruined my weekend as someone who has a lot of Kenneth Walker on his dynasty rosters. And now you got Charbonnet, who's going to be splitting carries with Ken Walker, who was in consideration for Offensive Rookie of the Year last season at that position. It is very frustrating, but I think what it shows you is that the Seahawks really want to commit to running the ball this year. And I think last year they got a little bit away from their identity of running the ball. They were passing at a much higher rate than they traditionally do. Now, they also went out and still got a wide receiver, Jackson Smith-Njigba. So I think that for football, for the NFL, the Seahawks are going to be a lot of fun. The offense is going to be really good. For fantasy, this is going to get very confusing, very annoying, and I think it's going to be very hard to try to predict which way this offense is going to go, whether that's in terms of passing or running the ball. And then once they are running the ball, who's really going to be getting those valuable touches? You're going to be seeing kind of one of those like Aaron Jones, A.J. Dillon mixes there, or maybe like a Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt, and it's kind of weird because now the bigger guy is also the receiving option. So I hate this for both of these guys in terms of dynasty value because they're both young and they're going to be a thorn in each other's side for a while. I might have more to say about this when we get to our veteran losers.
Now, are we all that surprised that this happened? Jeff, I know you and I talk behind the scenes about this quite a bit, but this is what Pete Carroll does, right? Chris Carson broke out. Everyone got super excited about Chris Carson, and then boom, drafts Rashad Penny in the first round. We should have expected him to add another running back in the draft, but I think the worst thing for Charbonnet is kind of where mock drafts had him falling was the back end of the first round, where he could have landed on, a team like the Bengals or the Chiefs, where he would have made that immediate impact. And this was just the worst case scenario, sliding to the Seahawks. So I'm with you. It's really hard to think of a bigger loser than Zach Charbonnet, but Jeff, let's hear who you're talking about because it might be just as big as Charb's.
Yeah, so I'm talking about Sean Tucker. And when you really look at the process, if you're a Devy analyst, if you're deep into Devy, Sean Tucker was thought of as a first-round rookie pick throughout most of the fall, coming into to January. And I know, Dave, we were in a league, and somebody took Sean Tucker at the 106 that we did the rookie draft in January. And so he entered that high. And the explosion was there, but then we saw the medical concerns come up, and we saw that he wasn't able to test at the combine, and then he saw he wasn't cleared to work at the school's pro day, and then the draft came and went, and Sean Tucker wasn't drafted. And so now, I don't know, you're dealing with an undrafted free agent, and not only he landed with Tampa, and then everybody's kind of excited with that landing spot because we know Rachaad White was not as great as what we wanted to see last year in his rookie glimpses, and Tampa's kind of entering a little bit of a rebuild, and so certainly they are primed to give an undrafted free agent a shot potentially in that depth chart, but they also added a back from Shepherd named Ronnie Brown, and I know that Matt Waldman was really high on Ronnie Brown, and that's the back coming in that's not really on a lot of radars right now, and everybody knows the name Ronnie Brown, but this is a different Ronnie Brown. This is not the ghost of Ronnie Brown. But no, he coming in there. So he's even got competition from another undrafted free agent to try to make that roster. You've had Keyshawn Vaughn there for a couple of years, and I think we all know that he's not going to be a breakout candidate, but he's been able to be on the roster for a couple of years, and I think he can serve a special teams role. He's already there. Rachaad White, he could step forward and be that 3-down back. And so while you think that there might be a path for utility for Sean Tucker, I mean, this guy's got to make a roster before you're even going to get there. And you still see people taking him in the third round of rookie drafts. There's just a lot of that's trading on name value. And it's just, to me, that's a wild pick that if you're going to do that, because I think you can still get day 2 players in your third round of your rookie draft. But to have him fall from that far, and I know that a name that comes to mind too in this draft is Tajay Spears. And we've heard a lot about Tajay Spears' arthritic knee. And so he had injury concerns too. He still went day 2. He still went round 3 to the Titans. And so I think when you juxtapose the two of them as a team saying, yes, we are concerned about this arthritic knee, but we still think he's a day 2 value, versus Sean Tucker saying, we're not even 250 plus draft picks. We don't even think this guy's worth a shot there. And so it's just right at this point, you're trading on name value, and it really, really hurts on his stock or lack of stock where we're at now.
Yeah, I'd have to go back and look in underdog drafts, but when the big board first opened, Sean Tucker was a name that was getting way steamed up draft boards. I mean, he was going right after Jahmyr Gibbs in like the 7th and 8th round of these drafts. So, yeah, I mean, again, completely in lockstep with you on that one. So that leaves us with the final rookie loser, and I'm going to take the absolute layup here. Will Levis. I mean, everybody had this guy projected to go as one of the top quarterbacks in the draft. Heck, if you were listening to Reddit, you would have thought that he was the #1 overall pick just 2 days before the draft when everybody was pushing him up there. And it makes sense. I mean, he's got that prototypical NFL build that so many teams are seeking nowadays. He's tall, he's strong, he's athletic, he's got a big arm, but we obviously know that he struggles with accuracy and decision-making, and that is inevitably what caused him to slide all the way into the 2nd round. But I'm not just going to sit here and bash Will Levis and, take an I told you so moment and talk about, how funny it was to watch him at the draft, because that's not what we want to do here. We want to try to provide as much actionable advice as possible. So I'm actually going to spin this as, even though he is technically a loser, and I hate using the term loser like that.
He's a draft loser.
He lost some value after the draft is what we should be saying. But I don't know. I think we might have overcorrected ever so slightly here, because if you look at the Titans right now, they could save $10 million if they cut Ryan Tannehill, and they could save another $6 million if they cut Derrick Henry. And right now, the Jags are the odds-on favorite to win the AFC South by a landslide. You can get them in most sports books somewhere between like -140, -180. I saw Kevin Coleman today, actually. He ran a who wins the AFC South poll. I voted for the Jags, and at the time I voted, I think there were 92% of other people were voting the Jags as well. And then you look at Houston and Indianapolis. They both invested high picks in C.J. Stroud and Anthony Richardson this year, and the Titans roster is bleak. I'm going to put you guys on the spot real quickly. Besides Treylon Burks, can you name a wide receiver on the Titans right now?
Kyle Phillips, Nick Westbrook-Akine. They took that wide receiver in the 7th round. I'm blanking on his name, but it's pretty rough. So Racing McMath is another one.
So
Jeff took all my guys.
Names. Yeah, we got 3.5 names out of Jeff, who is a depth chart savant. And most of the names that you dropped there, the people listening right now probably haven't even heard. I mean, we're talking Racy McGrath is like realistically going to be playing in 3 wide receiver sets. It is beyond bleak this year. So I think that, they got to take a step back and look at this roster and realize that they probably aren't going to be competing in the AFC South right now. That window is closed. So if they choose to cut Tannehill, Will Levis's only competition for a week 1 starting job is Malik Willis, who looked absolutely terrible last year. So yes, well, technically we're looking at Will Levis as a draft loser because he slid in the draft. I think that we overcorrected. A round 2 draft pick isn't a death sentence for a quarterback. You can go back to Brett Favre, but even more recently, Drew Brees, Derek Carr, Jalen Hurts is the big guy who slid just a couple of years ago and made a good name for himself. So he still has the tools to be a decent quarterback, but he's got the tools to be a really good fantasy quarterback if he can put it all together. So right now, with him slipping into the early 2nd round, he's a guy that I think you should still be targeting in your rookie drafts. Before we sign off, though, one more time, Jeff, let everyone know where they can find you on social media.
For whom J Bell tolls on Twitter and any other device that I might be signed up on as well, that would be my screen name as well. But thank you so much, Dave.
Of course. And Alfredo, let everyone know where they can find you.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at @ThePretendGM, which is also the name of my show. Next Monday, we're going to be doing a rookie mock draft, so we're going to keep all that rookie content going here at Football Guys.
If you haven't already, be sure to smash that subscribe button so you can see all of the video content that Football Guys has to offer. Thank you so much for tuning in. See you next week.